Alaikum, dear students. So this is the last part in our second class. In the previous section, I was talking about Chaucer, and we said that he is considered as the father of English literature. We talked about the features of his poetry, especially in the Canterbury Tales, and we said that in his writings he was focusing actually on criticizing the different features of people in his society. We said that he used humor, irony, and satire when he talked about the mistakes or the weaknesses of the different people in his country, especially those people who were in a position where people expect from them something, but on the contrary, they do the opposite or something different. Okay, today we will give a good example from the Canterbury Tale. One of the tales is the Briaress tale. The Briaress is a nun. And even she is the head of the place where she lives for nuns, okay? And this nun, from her name, a religious woman, and she is the head of a religious house, so we expect that this nun or Briaress to be full of piety, of love to her God, of being away from worldly things or worldly things. Like, for example, she doesn't care about fashion, about clothes, about behaviors, foods, and so on, because she is actually focusing on her prayers, on her piety to her God, and on showing the people that she's humble and good in nature. But on the contrary, this Briaress that we will talk about today, or Chaucer introduced for us, will give us a different idea about this type of women. So this is the poem which shows the Briaress tale. So she started with there was. Okay, so let's start reading and we will just explain some of them, because later, after going through the poem, I will go through the slides that explain and analyze this tale or poem. There also was a nun, a Briaress. Her way of smiling very simple and coy. إذن هو الآن بقدم لنا الراهبة. هذه الراهبة كانت طريقتها في الابتسام simple and coy، لطيفة جدا. Her greatest oath was only by Saint Loy, and she was known as Madame Eglantine. فاسمها الآن عرفنا أنه اسمها إغلانتين. انتبهوا للاسم because later we will find that this name is actually a name of a woman in the romantic stories at that time. Okay, فاطلعوا على أسلوبها إنه هي يعني تظهر وكأنها إنسانة، يعني المفترض إنه هي كنان، إنه هي عادة بتكون نعرف إحنا إيش الصورة النمطية عن أي راهبة، إنه هي إنسانة جدية، إنسانة يعني ابتسامتها عزيزة. ولكن النان اللي تشوسر بقدم لنا إياها لا، مختلفة، تتصرف وكأنها أميرة. she's smiling, simple and coy. okay. حتى her behaviors وكأنه هي بتحاول تتصرف وكأنه تربايتها من أعلى البيوت، يعني in the royal family. okay. And she was known as Madame Eglantine, and she sang a service with a fine intoning through her nose as was most seemly. إذن هنا بيحكي لي إنه هي كانت كمان حتى لما بتنشد النشيدة صوتها كان واضح وقوي وجميل، وكانت بتستخدم إخراج النغمات من الأنف. الآن لاحظوا أنه هذه في بعض some of the critiques they consider this as a good thing about her. Others they consider this as bad, and they analyzed it that instead of singing beautifully, she was singing thinking that she was singing beautifully, but actually her way of singing is like blowing the air from her nose, not from her mouth. So her song or her voice wasn't that beautiful, but she pretended or she believed that she had this beautiful voice. Okay, now let's continue. And she spoke daintily in French, extremely after the school of Stratford at Bow. French in the Paris style she didn't know. إذا كانت بتتكلم كلمات بالفرنسية، لكن الفرنسية هذه اللي كانت تتكلمها وكأنها متعلمة في أرقى المدارس الفرنسية، لكن ما لهاش أي علاقة باللهجة الباريسية، ولكن كانت تستخدمها حتى تظهر إنه هي daintily، إنه هي راقية وإنه هي style. okay, while she is not supposed to be like this. هي في النهاية راهبة. okay, now let's continue. Line 10. At least her manners were well taught withal. No morsel from her lips did she let fall, nor dipped her fingers in the sauce too deep. حتى يعني أسلوبها في الأكل كان راقي جدا، وكانت تحاول تبين وكأنه هي أميرة في أكلها. ما كانتش تسمع ولا لا no morsel from her lips did she let fall، ولا نقطة ولا إشي ينزل من شفايفها. وكمان أصابعها لما كانت تستخدم تاكل تكون يعني حريصة إنه ما تجيش في الصوص تبع الأكل. But she could carry a morsel up and keep the smallest drop from falling on her breast. okay, إذا هذا كانت آداب الطعام تبعتها، كانت كلها آداب ملكية راقية، تحاول فيها تظهر نفسها وكأنه هي أميرة وليست فقط إنسان عادية common person who is a nun. Okay, let's look at line 15. For courtliness she had a special zest, and she would wipe her upper lip so clean that not a trace of grease was to be seen upon her cup when she had drunk. To eat she reached a hand sedately for the meat. يعني لاحظوا كل هذا بتكلم عن آداب الطعام عندها، كلها كانت آداب يعني very polite and very actually polite and appropriate ways of eating, similar to the ways that the noble people or the royal family would use when they sit at the table. Number 20, she certainly was very entertaining, pleasant and friendly in her ways, and straining to counterfeit a courtly kind of grace, a stately bearing fitting to her place. يعني تخيلوا حتى أسلوبها في المعاملة كانت تحاول تظهر إنه هي تتظاهر بإنه هي إنسانة راقية ولطيفة جدا وقريبة من القلب، وإنه هي ودودة. كل هاي كانت التصرفات مش those actually behaviors didn't reflect her real character or her real personality. They were fake behaviors. يعني كلها تصرفات مزيفة. okay, fine. So a stately bearing fitting to her place and to seem dignified in all her dealings، عشان تظهر إنسانة يعني أرقى مما هي في الحقيقة. As for her sympathies and tender feelings, she was so charitably solicitous. She used to weep. طلعوا إنسانة يعني تظهر نفسها إنسانة مرهفة المشاعر. She used to weep، تنتحب، تبكي. If she but saw a mouse caught in a trap, if it were dead or bleeding. تخيلوا إنها لو شافت فار في المصيدة ميت أو بينزف كانت تبكي عليه من كتر رقة مشاعرها. طبعا في هذاك الوقت الفئران كانت منتشرة عندهم صراحة، وكانوا ما بيخافوش منهم يعني، خصوصا when you are a common person. okay, and she had little dogs she would be feeding. وكان في عندها كلابها الصغيرة 3 كلاب أعتقد، وكانت تطعمهم وتغذيهم كويس with roasted flesh. تخيلوا بإيش كانت تطعمهم. roasted flesh لحم مشوي or milk or fine white bread أو الحليب أو الخبز الأبيض الجودة العالية. Okay. تخيلوا in that time some people were very poor that considering roasted flesh or meat, milk and fine white bread as يعني expensive commodities يعني or goods that nobody or common people couldn't easily get. But instead of giving for the poor people, she would feed her dogs. So while you are reading, you think, wow, she is a very good-hearted person. She is a kind person. She is even feeding the dogs with those actually luxurious things. But actually, you should look to the indirect meaning, to the deep meaning that Chaucer is trying to convey to us. She wasn't a woman of mercy, actually, because there were many poor people in her country or around her, but instead of feeding the poor people, she's feeding the animals. I hope this is clear for you. And bitterly she wept if one were dead, or someone took a stick and made it smart. إذا كانت كمان يعني تبكي بشدة لو واحد من هذه الحيوانات أو الكلاب مات، أو شخص مسك عصا a stick and made it smart وحاول يضربهم أو يأدبهم. So because she was a very actually she was pretending, let's say she was pretending to be a cute person, a friendly person, a kind person. Okay, now she was all sentiment and tender heart. يعني قلبها كان مليء بالمشاعر والطيبة. Her veil was gathered in a seemly way. الحجاب والنقاب تبعها، انتم بتعرفوا المحجبات، مش المحجبات، الراهبات عندهم إلهم غطاء للرأس، فهذا هو. Her nose was elegant. الآن هو انتقل من لباسها، الآن انتقل للفيزيكال فيتشرز. الآن اطلع على الفيزيكال فيتشرز تبعتها. Her nose was elegant. Her eyes glass gray. Her mouth was very small but soft and red. Her forehead certainly was fair of spread, almost a span across the brows. I own. Okay. إذا اطلعوا على الوصف تبعها. المناخيرها مرتبين، الأنف عندها مرتب، العينين رمادي بيلمعوا زي القزاز، تمها very small صغير وناعم وأحمر، الجبين عندها عريض ولامع، والمسافة almost a span across the brows، المسافة ما بين الحاجبين كمان، دليل على يعني he was reflecting her physical beauty. Okay, but actually when you think about these physical features, they are not the features that we look for in a nun. These are the features of a woman who is caring more about earthly matters or earthly things. This is the actually the typical image of the women in romantic stories at that time. Okay. يعني زي وكأني أجي أتكلم إنه هي بدل ما هي تكون راهبة أو شيخة، الملامح تبعتها وكأنها عارضة أزياء. Okay, this is contradiction actually. So you can notice the irony that Chaucer is trying to pass to us through the description of her physical feature. So when he uses these words, don't believe that he's just admiring her physical features. No, he's actually making fun of them. This is humor. Okay, let's continue now. Her cloak اللي هي العباية I noticed had a graceful charm. يعني تخيلوا راهبة ومهتمة كتير بملابسها، لدرجة إنه العباءة اللي هي بتلبسها كراهبة كانت جميلة جدا وملفتة للنظر. She wore a coral trinket on her arm. وكان في عندها يعني زي السوارة على على الذراع تبعها. a set of beads the goddess tricked in green. وكان في عندها هم عادة بيشيلوا سبحة زي السبحة عنا اللي هي للتسبيح. أوكي، لكن لاحظوا عليها وطبعا جميلة جدا. once hung a golden brooch of brightest sheen on which there first was graven a crowned A. طلعوا اللي منقوش. إذن هي كانت حاملة أو لبساها على صدرها، كانت لابسة السبحة هاي اللي بيستخدموها للتسبيح عندهم للدين. الآن المفترض في نهايتها كروس، صح؟ أو the crucified Christ، الصليب أو المسيح المصلوب اللي بتعرفوا الشكل هذا. ولكن اطلعوا إيش المحطوط على البروش المتصل في السبحة تبعتها. أوكي، كان متصل عليه أو مرسوم عليه، مطبوع عليه عفوا ومنحوت عليه. طلعوا على آخر حاجة and lower منحوت عليه تحت amor vincit omnia. المقصود فيها love conquers all. فالآن أنا كيف سبحة ومكتوب عليها إن الحب يغلب الجميع أو الحب غلاب للجميع. So the idea here when we talk about amor, because this is a Latin, amor means love. Which love does she mean? Is this the earthly love or love of God? Because it could be love to God, but actually this phrase or this sentence is used in romantic stories. So does she here mean the romantic love or the physical love, or does she talk about love to the God? So here another sign of humor and irony and criticism of her way of behaving and wearing her clothes. Okay, so you can notice in this actually Chaucer in this poem is criticizing her. He is mocking her and trying to say that the nun is not supposed to be like this. Okay, you are a nun, you have to care about your religion, your God, your prayers, not about your table manners, not about your animals, not about your clothes, not about your accessories. Okay, fine. So now let's come to some of the comments that you can use to study. Actually, most of them I explained them during reading the poem, but still this will help you in case you don't want to listen again to the video, but just to read the PowerPoint slides, okay? So the prioress, a religious woman who runs a convent اللي هو الدير, okay, has all the qualities of a courtly lady, okay, which are hardly the qualities one looks for in a nun. okay, courtly lady اللي هي سيدة من البلاط الملكي. اوكي، فطبعا سيدات البلاط الملكي الأميرات والسيدات اللي من الطبقة الملكية بتكون لهم تصرفاتهم مواصفات غير عن الإنسان العادي. Moreover, she has the physical attributes of a medieval romance heroine with her small red mouth and her broad fair forehead. إذا حتى الوصف الجسدي إلها هو بيتفق مع بطلات الروايات الرومانسية في ذلك الوقت وليس صفات الراهبة. In fact, she has no business being on the pilgrimage. Yet she seems to earn the unqualified admiration of a Chaucer. Okay, sorry. In fact, she has no business being on the pilgrimage. ملهاش أصلا شغل في ولا هي مش واضح إيش سبب إنه هي رايحة للحج، مش محتاجة. Yet she seems to earn the unqualified admiration of Chaucer the Pilgrim. You should notice that this Chaucer is not actually our poet. When we talk about this Chaucer, he is the narrator of the tales. He's the narrator of the tales. But of course, he's speaking on in the tongue of Chaucer the poet. So Chaucer the Pilgrim, فلما أنا أتكلم تشوسر ذا بيلجريم الحج تشوسر، أوكي، الحج تشوسر هذا يا جماعة هو الشخصية اللي موجودة في إطار القصة، اللي هو بيعرض لنا الشخصيات، كان يوصف لنا إياهم في البرولونج، ذا introductory برولونج، عرض لنا الشخصيات وعرض لنا إيش السياق تبع القصص اللي رايحين نسمعها. So this is the persona taken by Chaucer the poet. Remember, we are not supposed to fall into the trap of accepting the narrator's very naive admiration of the prioress at its face value. ننتبه وما نقعش في مصيدة إنه هالوصف الحلو والكلمات الحلوة اللي هو بيستخدمها، إنه الكلمات الحلوة اللي بيستخدمها في وصفها مش معناه إنه هو بالفعل معجب فيها، لكن هذه الكلمات he uses gentle irony، هي مجرد سخرية بطريقة لطيفة to show the absurdity، سخرية of what he only seems to be praising. يعني هو فعليا هو بيوصف لنا إياها وبيوصف لنا مواصفاتها الجميلة جدا، هو فعليا مش إنه معناه معجب فيها، ولكنه يسخر كيف أنت راهبة وبتتصرفي بهذه الطريقة، أوكي، أو إنه صفاتك أو صفاتك الجسدية بتتفق مع بطلات الروايات الحب، وكيف أنت لبسك بتحاولي تكوني وتقلدي الناس اللي أعلى. Okay, fine. Irony in the portrayal of the prioress. Chaucer's use of irony may first be noted in his presentation of the prioress. The prioress, we are told, زي ما أخبرنا في القصيدة, spoke French fluently and elegantly. تكلمنا عنها إنه هي بتستخدم اللغة الفرنسية fluently and elegantly according to the school of Stratford at Bow, Parisian French not being known to her. ومع ذلك اللهجة الباريسية ما كانتش تعرفها. Okay, this is an ironic reference to the prioress' aristocratic presentation. يعني هي كانت استخدام اللغة الفرنسية في الحديث بيظهر الشخص وكأنه من طبقة أرستقراطية، لأنه هناك الوقت في ذلك الوقت إذا بتتذكروا حكينا إنه اللغة الفرنسية كانت لغة الطبقة العليا في المجتمع، طبقة النبلاء والملوك، بينما اللغة الإنجليزية كانت طبقة العامية، فهي كانت بتستخدم طبقة لغة الطبقة العليا، the language of the aristocratic class, in order to show that she was actually up to that level. Okay, her dress. So now we finished with the language that she used, okay, and the way she spoke. Now let's come to her dress. Her dress and her fashionable manners are also ironically described. She let no morsel fall from her lips. She took pains to imitate the behavior of the royal court. So actually in her behaviors, in her table manners, she was actually not, these were fake behaviors, not her real behaviors. يعني in front of people, she would try to look as a real person. But actually in her, if she's not in front of people, she will behave like a common person. Okay. As for her charitable nature, so we spoke about her way of speaking and smiling, her French language, we talked about her behaviors and table manners. Now let's come to her charitable nature. Chaucer tells us that she would weep if she saw a mouse caught in a trap, that she fed her dogs with roasted meat or milk and the finest bread, and that she gets greatly distressed if anybody stuck her pet dogs with a stick. Okay, thus the prioress' charity seems to be misdirected. Okay, because the roasted meat, milk, and bread of the finest were considered of the finest quality. Okay, the bread of the finest quality were regarded as delicacies. يعني أشياء يعني نادرة, rare things in the society at that time, in which a large number of people never got enough to eat. So instead of, if you are a charitable person, okay, بتحب تتصدق وتعطي الصدقات, then your charity is supposed to go to the poor people, not to luxurious things like the pets, the animals, and so on. Okay, so if you cry on the people and their difficulties and their miseries. Don't cry on the mouse. That's the point of Chaucer. Now, we are done with her charitable nature. Let's come now to her brooch. The inscription اللي هو الحفر on أو النقش on her brooch, love conquers all, is ironic. Because love here seems to have an ambiguous meaning. Love both in the divine and secular senses. يعني الحب ممكن يكون الحب الإلهي للخالق, and secular senses ممكن يكون الحب الدنيوي للأشياء الدنيوية في الحياة. In short, the ironic implication throughout the portrait of the Pyrrhus is that in spite of her holy calling, بالرغم من أنه هي مسماها مسمى ديني, okay, وظيفتها وظيفة دينية بحتة, she is more concerned with worldly things than with the spirit. إذا كانت هي اهتمامها أكثر بالأشياء الدنيوية أكثر منها بالأشياء الروحانية. Okay, Chaucer emphasizes the Pyrrhus' basic femininity rather than her spiritual qualities. يعني when he describes her physical appearance, focusing on her lips, on her eyes, on her cheeks, on her forehead, he is actually focusing on her woman qualities. Okay, these are the physical qualities of a woman that everybody would admire. So he's not focusing on her spiritual qualities, because that's what she wanted the other people around her to focus on her physical appearance. When he refers to her fine nose, small mouth, soft and red lips, eyes gray as glass, and so on, he's actually focusing on qualities of a beautiful woman, not a nun. Okay? Fine. Now, her name, do you remember when I said Eglantine? Her name is also actually ironic, because her name is a name of a heroine's name, بطلة المسلسلات الروايات in the conventional romances. يعني في الغالب البطلة في القصة الرومانسية, قصص الحب, اوكي, بتكون اسمها إغلانتين. كان في عندهم مجموعة وكان اسمها إغلانتين. She, we are told, was simple and sweet in her smiling. Her greatest oath is being merely by Saint Louis. يعني تخيلوا هي نن راهبة, يعني المفترض إنه يعني كيف عندنا بالدين الخضوع في القول, فهي عندها هيك أسلوبها في الابتسام, okay, كان في إغراء للناس. Her wimple was neatly pleated. The effect of all this is an ironic association of the religious and the worldly rather than religious. طبعا, of course, if you are a religious person, you have to be friendly, you have to be loving, but don't, as especially here we are talking about a woman, don't use or focus on your physical appearance and try your feminine or female features to affect the people. Okay? So the ironic implication of this portrait is thus obvious. طبعا واضح من كل العرض اللي مر إنه فعلا هو he is ironic, not actually depicting or showing admiration, a real admiration of her. Okay, so that's, I think, the end of this analysis of the Pyrrhus. So I hope that now, just to sum up, Pyrrhus, or the Pyrrhus tale, is a mock or irony on one of the characters that existed during Chaucer's society or times, and this is a nun. And the nun is supposed to be connected with religious things, with the spiritual matters, but actually she has nothing to do with the real nature of the nun. On contrast, she is focusing more on her physical appearance, on her clothes, on her behaviors and manners, and she is pretending something different from her real character. She is faking everything in her personality. Thank you very much. That's the end of this class.